The glass walls of the boardroom made the whole city look like it was watching me, but nobody inside the room cared about how I felt. I was the only one standing. Everyone else sat around the long table like judges waiting to give a sentence. My name was on the big screen beside the words Ethics and Conduct Review. It felt like my whole life was written up there in bright light, ready to be erased. My hands shook, but I kept them at my side so they would not see it. Mr. Calloway said my behavior damaged the company. He said I had broken trust. He said I was not aligned with leadership. His tone was calm, but every sentence cut into me. They were not angry because I had done wrong. They were angry because I refused to lie about false numbers in the reports. They were punishing me for telling the truth. My throat burned. My chest hurt, as if someone pressed a weight against it. They were about to vote me out of the job I had worked so hard for. Then a sharp, heavy knock struck the door. It opened. 3 people stepped inside with calm faces and firm voices. Securities and Exchange Commission. The room stopped moving. Everything broke open in 1 second. Fear filled the room like thick smoke no one could clear. The lead officer asked everyone to remain seated and silent. Her voice was calm, which somehow made the fear worse. She opened a thick folder and began reading names. Every name she read belonged to someone who had tried to push me out, who whispered I was the problem. Those same people suddenly looked pale. Mr. Calloway tried to smile and said there must be a misunderstanding. His voice cracked halfway through the word. The officer didn't even look at him. She read from the folder again. False filings, missing confirmations, altered financials, internal emails where my name appeared again and again. For 1 second, my stomach twisted. What if they had twisted this to blame everything on me? Then the officer turned toward me. She said they had received my report. She said my report was why they were here. She said they needed to speak with me privately. The whole boardroom turned at once and looked at me. Some looked angry, some terrified, some stunned that the person they tried to erase was now the person the SEC came because of the power in the room shifted quietly. They were no longer in control. Truth had entered the room wearing badges. The hallway felt too quiet compared to the boardroom. My heart was still racing. The officer introduced herself as Ms. Reeves. She said she had read my entire report from start to finish. Then she said the words nobody at the company had ever said to me. You did the right thing. Those 5 words almost broke the wall I had built inside myself. For months they had called me dramatic, stubborn, disloyal, or naive. Now someone finally said what I had felt all along, but had begun to doubt. She said the investigation was bigger than I knew. She said they needed full cooperation from me. Being honest was not enough anymore. She asked if I was willing to stand as a whistleblower. That meant my life would change. Jobs, friends, safety, peace, everything on the table at once. Before I could answer, the boardroom door opened. Mr. Calloway stepped out with a soft smile he had never used with me in all the years I had worked there. He suddenly called me Daniel, like we were old friends. He asked if we could fix this internally and talk alone. Ms. Reeves didn't stop him. She just watched closely. And I finally understood something simple. They weren't confident leaders. They were scared of what I knew. He led me into a small side office and slowly closed the door. The friendly mask dropped from his face the moment the latch clicked. His eyes hardened and his posture changed. His voice turned flat. He said the situation did not have to continue. He said nobody had to get hurt. He told me the company valued me. Then he began to paint pictures with his words. A raise, a better title, another branch, a clean record, more money than I had ever earned at once in my life. Then he slid an envelope across the table. It stopped directly in front of my hand. He didn't say bribe. He said appreciation and support. But we both knew exactly what it was. Money to buy silence. A price for my integrity printed in paper and sealed in an envelope. When I didn't take it, his tone changed again. It became sharp, cold. He said people who fought things like this always regretted it. He said life could get very hard. I pushed the envelope back toward him. He stared at it like it had betrayed him. A firm knock hit the office door. The SEC was waiting. He wasn't finished with me. But neither was the truth. We walked back into the boardroom together. The air felt heavier than before, like the room itself understood what was happening. Laptops were open. The officers were typing. Everyone sat stiffly, afraid to move wrong. They asked questions about a project named Silvercrest. My stomach tightened. That was where I had first seen numbers that didn't match reality. That was when I refused to approve fake revenue. They put documents up on the screen. My name appeared under several approvals. My chest went cold. I said, clearly I had never approved those entries. My voice shook, but I didn't step back. The officer turned to Colin, the IT manager. He stared at the table like he wanted to sink through it. His hands wouldn't stay still. She said his name again. He finally broke. He said my login had been used without my knowledge. He said he was told to route approvals under my account. They used my name because everyone trusted me. They had not just tried to silence me. They tried to frame me. I felt something inside me stop shaking. They had used my honesty like a mask to cover their lies. That was the deepest wound. The officer nodded slowly. All devices would now be seized. Everyone reached for their phones at once. Fear was no longer pretending to hide. Phones were placed on the glass table one by one. The sound of each phone hitting the surface felt louder than normal, like the room itself was listening. The officer said laptops would also be collected. A few people complained about personal data, but their voices sounded weak, without power. One phone buzzed nonstop. It belonged to Paige, the vice president of finance. The officer looked at the screen. A group chat message appeared again, and again with new alerts. The chat name was Cleanup Crew. The room fell silent in a different way. Not shock this time. Exposure. The officer opened the chat. My name filled the messages. Plans to isolate me. Plans to use my login if needed. Plans to write performance reports that made me look unstable. Plans to push me out before I started trouble. Paige covered her face and began to cry. Not loud. Just tears she could not stop. Others stared at the wall, at the table, anywhere except the screen. The officer said this showed retaliation. It was not an accident. It was targeted. I remembered every cold look, every meeting I was left out of, every laugh after I walked past. I wasn't imagining it. They had built it, and now it was written in their own words. While the officers read the messages, memories replayed inside my head like quick scenes. Closed doors, sudden schedule changes, my projects being handed to others without reason. Before today, I thought maybe I was a problem. Now the truth stood in front of me. They made a plan to break me. A strange calm came over me. The fear that once filled my chest changed into something solid. Not anger that burned, but strength that didn't shake anymore. The officer asked who created Cleanup Crew. Nobody spoke. The officer asked who ordered the login misuse. Silence grew heavy. Then someone whispered that it came from higher up, higher than the table, higher than the board. There was a name everyone knew, but no one said easily. It moved like a shadow through the company. The officer asked the name. Eyes moved across the table. Everyone waited for someone else to say it. Colin finally whispered it. Mr. Blake. The air in the room changed. No one laughed. No one interrupted. The name itself had power, but power was beginning to shift, and he had no idea what he was walking into next. The door opened as if the name pulled him into the room. A tall man walked in with slow, controlled steps. His suit was perfect, his expression calm. He didn't look surprised to see the SEC. He didn't look afraid. He sat down like the chair had been reserved for him. It was Mr. Blake. He smiled politely and said he was there to support clarity. His voice was gentle, but it carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. People straightened in their seats without thinking. Then he looked at me. He didn't glare. He studied me. He said I was talented but inexperienced. He said big systems were complex. He said intentions like mine were good, but dangerous when handled without wisdom. He wrapped insults inside soft words. He said the real problem was confusion. He said numbers were misunderstood. He said no one did anything wrong on purpose. He was building a new story right there in front of the SEC. But when the officer asked him about the hidden server, his smile changed. Only for half a second. Like ice cracking. He said he didn't know about it. They said they already had warrants for his offices. Silence swallowed the room. His control was slipping. And he knew it. Mr. Blake tried to take back control with words. He talked about market pressures, complex reporting, and responsible leadership. He sounded calm, like a teacher explaining simple math to children. Then he turned everything toward me. He said I had asked for special treatment. He said I wanted promotions and bonuses. He said I was angry because I didn't get what I wanted. His lies were smooth and practiced. He expected me to break. I didn't. I said I never asked for anything except honesty in reports. I said I rejected the envelope left on the desk. I said I refused fake revenue. My voice didn't shake this time. The officer asked him for his phone and laptop. He said he had brought none. The officer said his home files and secondary office were already seized. His smile faded for real this time. He looked around the table and saw something he had not expected. The fear was no longer happening only to us. It was happening to him. The officer presented evidence of 2 sets of books. The room reacted like a wave moving through it. This was no longer rumor. This was proof. And proof has its own voice. The screen displayed records from a hidden server registered under another name. One set showed real transactions. One set showed fake reports sent to investors. They sat side by side like 2 faces of the same person. Silvercrest was there again. 2 more ghost projects appeared with it. Empty companies that only existed on paper, built to move money quietly. Trails of payments led into shell accounts. Trails of profits led back to people in this building. Then I saw my own name again. It sat on approvals I never gave. They called it cover trust in messages. My honesty was a tool they used to sell lies. They borrowed my reputation like clothing. They thought it belonged to them. Something inside me stopped bending. The officer said arrests might happen today. People shifted in their chairs. Some swallowed hard. Some stared straight ahead. Mr. Blake's calm expression turned into something colder. He didn't look untouchable anymore. He looked trapped, and the truth was closing in on all sides. I stepped into the hallway to steady my breathing, but it felt like the building itself was shaking. My heart was still racing when Brian walked toward me. He had always been the friendly one, full of jokes, quick smiles, easy conversations in the break room. He smiled now, but it didn't reach his eyes. He said he supported me. He said he always believed I meant well. Then he leaned closer and asked what exactly I told the SEC. He asked what files they had. He asked whose names were mentioned. It became clear. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about himself. I remembered seeing BH in the cleanup crew chat. I remembered how news always moved after Brian checked in with people. I looked him in the eye and said I would tell the whole truth, every part of it. His smile felt like a mask dropping. He nodded once and walked away fast, too fast for someone calm. Ms. Reeves walked up and said they needed me back inside. And a new thought hit me hard and cold. The people who smiled the widest were the same ones helping to destroy me behind my back. This story was uglier and deeper than I thought. Mr. Dalton asked if I had saved anything. I remember the small flash drive hidden in my desk drawer for months. It had become my quiet insurance when I started feeling unsafe. My hand shook, unlocking my office door. I opened the drawer. It was gone. Not misplaced. Gone. I searched every folder, every pocket, every stack of paper. The space where it had been felt like a shout inside my head. Only 2 people had access to my office besides me, Brian and Paige. One of them had taken it to destroy it. My heart dropped, but then another memory returned. Weeks earlier, during a night when sleep refused to come, I emailed copies of the same files to my personal account out of fear that something like this might happen. I told Ms. Reeves. She nodded and moved fast. Just then the lights flickered. Screens across the floor blinked and shut down. Computer access failed. Files vanished off screens in front of people's eyes. Someone was trying to wipe systems before the SEC locked them down. This wasn't panic anymore. This was deliberate destruction. Someone was still fighting hard to bury the truth, and they were doing it right now. The tech specialist worked quickly, speaking while typing. The shutdown and deletion commands came from a secret admin account called Atlas. It wasn't part of normal records. It had higher power than any other account in the company. Atlas had been used before. It changed records at night. It moved numbers on weekends. It erased trails whenever questions got too close. Now Atlas was trying to burn everything before the truth fully surfaced. Access logs revealed 3 creators tied to the account: Mr. Blake, Mr. Calloway, Page. They all spoke at the same time, denying, deflecting, accusing one another, raising their voices. The old calm leadership tone was gone. Panic sat in its place. The SEC issued a digital freeze order. Doors auto-locked. Elevators stopped. USB ports disabled. Every machine became evidence. The officer said anyone who tried to destroy records would face extra charges. No one moved. No one even shifted in their seat now. Atlas had once been their invisible shield. Now it was their clearest fingerprint. The lies they thought were buried had names and time stamps. And the walls they built to trap others were starting to close in on them instead. With nowhere left to run, Mr. Blake tried one more weapon. He aimed a story at me. He said I misunderstood complex systems. He said my tone scared coworkers. He said I caused chaos with my accusations. He painted me as a storm instead of the person standing in it. Months ago, those words would have crushed me. Today they sounded weak. I spoke clearly. I described how bank statements didn't match ledgers. I explained forged approvals under my login. I told him about the envelope in the side office and the threat wrapped in a smile. None of it was drama. It was facts. The officer asked whether there was proof of retaliation against me. There was. Cleanup crew flashed on the screen. So did forged approvals. So did alter performance reviews calling me unfit. Then Ms. Reeves said something that changed the room again. Another whistleblower had already contacted them. Not me. Not Nolan yet. Someone else entirely. Eyes moved fast around the table. Suddenly no one trusted anyone else. The fear in the room was no longer focused on me. It spread among them like electricity, jumping wire to wire. And someone unseen was about to step forward. The door opened. Nolan walked in. He worked in reconciliations, usually quiet, usually ignored. He was the kind of person people forgot in rooms. But he didn't look invisible anymore. He looked steady. He said he had kept backup copies of reconciliations and investor replies. He said he noticed numbers change after he balanced them. He said he had felt scared, but tired of being silent. He looked at me. He said seeing what they did to me made him speak. He handed over secure cloud credentials. Inside were emails, statement screenshots, internal notes, and earlier versions of ledgers before someone adjusted them. Pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. Real records, real dates, real trails. Mr. Blake stared at Nolan like he was an unexpected fire. Paige covered her face again. Mr. Calloway leaned back as if the seat might swallow him. The SEC granted Nolan whistleblower protection. He sat next to me. For the first time since the morning started, I didn't feel alone anymore. Truth wasn't just my burden now. It belonged to more than one voice. And the more it was spoken, the heavier it became. Heavy enough to break everything built on lies. The SEC team connected Nolan's files to the hidden server records. On the large screen, lines appeared like a map. Money moved through small shell companies with fake addresses and simple names. Some lines came back to people in the room. Others led to outside investors who acted like ghosts behind the scenes. Paige finally spoke. Her voice shook. She said she was told not to ask questions. She said she signed what came across her desk because saying no meant losing everything. Tears ran down her face, but her words stayed steady. Then Ms. Reeves revealed something new. An investor had called early that morning, before the SEC entered the building. Someone had warned them that watchdogs were moving. The time of the call matched the exact moment Brian asked what evidence I had shared. Security checked the building. Brian was gone. His badge log showed exit through a service door right before the lockdown order. He had left carrying a backpack. He did not sign out with security. He did not look back at the camera. He wasn't confused. He was running, but he left a trail, and the investigation was no longer trapped inside the building walls. It had just spilled into the city outside. They rewound security footage. There was Brian on the screen, walking fast through the service exit. His shoulders were tense. He kept his head down. He clutched a backpack like it was full of something more valuable than clothes. The SEC contacted local authorities. At the same time, tech teams detected login attempts from outside the network. Someone was still trying to reach Atlas. Someone out there wanted to finish deleting what remained, but the digital freeze order had already sealed the systems. Delete commands failed again and again. Inside the boardroom, another alert went off. There was still a second internal device pushing Atlas commands. The officer walked slowly behind the boardroom chairs. The room felt like it was holding its breath. The trail ended at Colin's old workstation. The officer asked him to stand. He broke before she finished the sentence. His voice cracked as he said he didn't mean for it to go this far. He said every wrong step came from fear, then from habit, then from greed, and by the time he wanted to stop, it was too late. They placed him in handcuffs. No one looked away. The first mask had fallen completely, and it would not be the last. After the arrest, the room changed. Nobody pretended anymore. The power that once sat with the executives had moved across the table and taken a new seat beside the SEC. The suits that once looked like armor now looked like costumes from a play that had ended. Mr. Blake tried to stand and speak, but the officer told him to sit. He obeyed. That single action said more than words. The officer stated that whistleblower protections were now formally active. Nobody could fire me. Nobody could punish Nolan. Nobody could threaten us for speaking. The weight of months of fear finally began to lift off my shoulders. Boxes arrived. Documents were sealed. Storage rooms were tagged with bright tape. The boardroom that once had been used to corner me now looked like a crime scene of paper and glass. I watched people who once told me I was too loud sit completely silent. They had always seemed larger than life. Now they looked very human, very breakable. They were not forces of nature. They were people who chose lies again and again until the lies became their normal language, and the truth had finally learned how to speak louder than them. By afternoon, word had already traveled. Employees whispered even when they tried not to. Phones buzzed quietly in pockets. People looked toward the boardroom door as they walked by, as if they could feel the weight of what happened inside. Reporters waited outside the building. Cameras, questions, rumors. My hands shook as I stepped into a quiet corner and called my mother. I told her I was safe, but involved in something big. She didn't ask for details. She simply said, "I trust you." Those 3 words steadied my breathing more than anything else. Inside, interviews continued. Stories were compared. Numbers were checked. Lies had to sit next to bank records, and they didn't match. Then leaked screenshots hit the news. The truth was no longer locked inside our building. It was everywhere. Mr. Blake looked at the floor. Mr. Calloway rubbed his forehead again and again like he could erase reality. Paige stared into nothing, as if seeing past a room. The world outside now knew what they had tried to hide. And truth, once it gets air, does not go back into silence. An older employee named Harold stood slowly. People barely noticed him before today. He had worked here longer than almost anyone. He spoke quietly, but every person in the room leaned in. He said this didn't begin last year. It began years ago. He said every time someone raised questions, they disappeared from the company. Their desks emptied overnight. Emails stopped. Their names were never spoken again. Slowly, people learned to stay quiet. Then he opened a thick folder. He had kept notes. Dates, names, meeting summaries, printed emails. He said he hadn't saved them for revenge. He saved them because he knew this day would come and someone would finally listen. The SEC added his folder to the evidence table. The picture got bigger. The fraud wasn't one storm. It was whether that had lasted years. Then Harold said something else. There had been someone above Mr. Blake once. Someone who never showed up in everyday meetings but pulled strings anyway. A person who stayed in the shadows. The room became silent again, because secrets rarely live alone. They build networks. And this one had deeper roots than anyone wanted to admit. One of the collected phones started ringing inside an evidence bag. The officer answered it on speaker. A calm voice spoke. It did not give a name. It said to stop talking. It said lawyers were coming. It said agreements will be remembered. The tone was relaxed, almost bored, like problems were just tiny storms that always passed. The officer stated that the call was recorded by federal investigation. There was a pause. Then the caller hung up. The SEC began tracing the path. The number bounced between several lines, then an overseas server. Someone had spent years building shadows to hide in. That kind of design does not belong to someone small. The room understood at the same time. This went beyond just company leadership. But the people in front of us still carried responsibility. They had signed. They had approved. They had pushed anyone who questioned them out of the way. For a moment, fear brushed my mind again. Not panic. Something clearer. I knew this was bigger than I thought when I first sent that report. Ms. Reeves's voice cut through my thoughts. We continue. And the story kept unfolding in the open air, where lies had no place to hide anymore. By evening, temporary monitors were assigned over the company. Financial controls were removed from the old hands. It felt like someone had taken a steering wheel away from a driver who had been asleep too long. A hearing was scheduled. People would answer under oath instead of hiding behind polished phrases. Paige asked if honesty would help her. The officer told her honesty matters, but consequences depend on facts. Paige nodded. Then she started talking. For the first time in years, she spoke without editing herself. Secret meetings. Pre-written numbers. Emails deleted before anyone else saw them. Every new sentence opened another door. Then Ms. Reeves turned to me. She asked if I would testify fully. Testifying was not about talking. It was about standing up in front of people who once tried to ruin me and refusing to bend. I remembered the envelope, the lies, the fake approvals, the way they spoke my name like it was dirt. I said yes. My voice did not shake. Mr. Blake stared at me across the room. His calm expression was gone now. Not anger, not fear, something else. Recognition. He finally understood I would not break. And that realization scared him more than anything else that day. The night before the hearing, sleep did not come. I watched city lights blink in the dark and thought about everything that had happened since the morning of that meeting. It felt like months had passed inside a single day. My phone buzzed. It was Nolan. He admitted he was scared. He also said he finally felt free. For years, he lived in silence while wrong things grew louder around him. He said speaking up was like breathing again after being underwater. Another message came from an unknown number. It said to stay silent or things would become difficult. No shouting, no insults, just cold confidence. I saved the message and sent it straight to Ms. Reeves. I did not answer. Silence can be powerful when used the right way. I did not want revenge that hurt just to hurt. I wanted something different. I wanted truth to stand where lies had lived for years. I wanted real consequences, not anger. The sun slowly touched the edge of the sky. I ironed my shirt. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone who had been bruised but not broken. And I knew exactly what I would say when that microphone turned on. The hearing room looked nothing like our boardroom. It was brighter, colder, and calmer. There was no fake charm in the air. Only rules. Microphones waited. People spoke only when called. Every word became part of the record. I took my seat. I told the story from the beginning. I explained fake numbers, Silvercrest forged approvals under my login, cleanup crew, Atlas, hidden servers threats, and the envelope on the table. I did not exaggerate. I did not soften. I let facts stand. Nolan spoke after me. Then Paige. Then Harold. Each voice added another piece to the truth until the story stood taller than anyone in the room. Mr. Blake tried to defend himself. He spoke about confusion, complexity, market pressure. But the documents on the screen did not bend with him. Bank records do not care about smooth voices. The panel asked direct questions. Why 2 sets of books? Why forged approvals? Where did the money go? His answers got shorter every time. The panel announced criminal referrals and deeper investigation. People in the audience gasped quietly. It wasn't the end yet, but the direction was finally clear, and there was no road back to the place where all of this began. Weeks passed before life felt normal again, and even then, it was a new kind of normal. Reports became public. Charges were filed. People who once spoke down to everyone else now stood in lines like everyone else, waiting to answer to the law. The company changed. Systems changed. People spoke more openly. Fear lost some of its old power. Sometimes people asked me if I felt like I won. It did not feel like winning. It felt like standing up slowly after being pushed for a very long time and realizing I was still myself. I remember the hurt, the cold looks, the lonely lunches, the nights without sleep. Those memories still existed. They just didn't control me anymore. One image stayed the clearest. The knock on the boardroom door. The badges on the glass table. The faces that once looked confident suddenly frozen when the SEC walked in. They targeted me because I chose integrity. They used my name as cover for lies. They planned to erase me and keep their story whole. They forgot something simple. Integrity is not weakness. It is weight, and when enough of it gathers in one place, it tips the whole room. They tried to break me. Instead, truth broke them, and they were the ones left frozen in that room.